our full committee here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Lee to start.
The 43.3 average annual salary.
Y'all there?
We are.
I'm sorry. I was trying to kill the echo. Did that kill the echo?
I think it might have just brought it back. Let me see. Are we okay? Yeah, we're okay. Go ahead.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so sorry for the delay. Welcome to the Telephonic Finance and Audit Committee meeting for August the 1st, 2023. The time is 2:03. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Secretary of State as required by Texas Government Code. Before we take a roll call, I'd like to remind everyone to please mute their phones unless you need to speak. Laura, let's begin with the roll call.
Thank you. Starting with Chair Lee,
Here.
Regent Austin,
Present.
Regent Long.
Here.
Thank you. Regent Scott.
Here.
I believe we have Regent Flores on the call.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Any other regents calling in? Great. Moving down to our staff, starting with Chancellor McCall,
Here.
Daniel Harper,
Here.
Carol Fox,
Here.
Sean Cunningham,
Here.
Derek Alexander,
Here.
Nellie Herrera, here, Kelly Winnemute,
Here.
John Hayek,
Here.
Pierce Mitchell,
Here.
Mike Winnemute,
Here.
and I believe we have, Ashley Spicer Reynolds. Okay, and we have several folks from internal audit on the call as well. We have Ramona Strickland, here, Kelly Blissett,
Here.
Mike Miller,
Here.
Scott Cupp.
I'm here.
Great, and did I miss anyone on roll call? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Daniel, Carol, and I had an opportunity to review the agenda prior to this meeting. At this time, I'll be happy to turn the meeting over to Daniel, who will present the Finance and Audit Committee agenda items for our next board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have, I think, 6 items to consider: the operating budget for 2024, the audit and compliance plan for 2024, 4 consent agenda items, and then 1 informational item. And unless you prefer to do it differently, I'll lay out all the items and then they can seek a vote upon conclusion of the agenda. So the first item is on page 93, and it's the operating budget for fiscal year 2024. This item requests approval of the components 2024 operating budgets. The submission includes a narrative summary from the CEO, a consolidated numerical summary, and the detailed tables by funding source, which is broken out by state funds, designated funds, and auxiliary funds. And then we have some mandatory supplemental schedules related to athletics, the student service fee, and then the matrix of operating expenses. The proposed budget is $1.47 billion. That's a 12.2% increase above last year's adopted budget. Total revenues is $1.65 billion. Total expenses, $1.47 billion. The difference there is net transfers, which relates to debt service and some construction funds the state provides. That's almost $200 million. And then we have a small use of fund balance right at $13 million for across the entire system. If you look on page 94, that will recap the sources of revenue. Tuition and fees is $823 million. That's up about 7% associated with enrollment changes. I'll note that on the revenue side, tuition and fees makes up 1/2 of our budget. State appropriations is $588 million. That's up 25%. Sales and services, which is predominantly going to be housing and dining operations, is $182 million. And then turn to page 95, and it's recap by expenses. Half of our funds, around 725 million, go directly to support academic and instructional support, with the remainder of the funds going to support the overall mission. The part I'll mention is on page 95, the red pie chart is scholarships and fellowships. That's 122 million. In addition to that, there's around 380 to 400 million dollars of additional discounts and allowances that aren't captured in the operating budget. And then I'll note on page 96, around 60% of our costs, or $900 million, is associated with payroll and payroll related expenses. Unless there's any questions, we'll go and start the institutional aspect of it. And we'll start with Lamar University, which begins on page 111 of your materials. Dr. Taylor.
All right. I'm going to introduce Kenny.
Yeah, hi, AVP for budget for Lamar University. Were there any specific questions that were pertaining to the operating budget, or do you want me to explain?
Just didn't know if Dr. Taylor had any highlights he wanted to mention.
Oh, no, this is Mark Robinson. Yeah, we've got some increase in our student population, particularly in international net gain. And we've also budgeted, I think, about 6.5 for contingency, and also a $2 million surplus to help bolster our reserves.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Lamar University on their proposed operating budget? If not, next up is Sam Houston State University, which does include now an operating budget for the College of Medicine, which begins on page 131. And I believe Amanda Withers will be laying out some remarks on Dr. White's behalf.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Daniel is correct. I am delighted that we have the opportunity to present two budgets this year due to the generous support of the Texas legislature in providing formula funding for our College of Osteopathic Medicine. Our total FY24 budget, as noted in the CEO letter, is $464 million for our coming year. This comprises $428 million for the general academic institution and an additional $35 million allocated to the College of Osteopathic Medicine. This all funds budget encompasses education general, designated, and auxiliary, and is balanced between revenue and expenses with supplements from fund balance reserves for some intentional investments that we are making. We also did experience a slight enrollment decrease of 0.6% during fall of 2022 to a total of 21,480 students, including the 330 students from the medical school. Despite this minor decline, our current indicators are robust. Housing reservations are surpassing expectations, and as of this morning, we're over 100% of our capacity. And freshman retention stands at 74.8% as of this morning. That's an impressive figure, not only because it's a 2% increase over last year, but also given the size of our last year's freshman class, which was our largest on record. Additionally, we continue to have full orientations this summer. Nevertheless, in light of the ongoing uncertainties impacting student attrition and new enrollment, we did maintain a conservative approach in formulating our proposed budget, relying on actual enrollment trends. Our appropriated general revenue for 2024 demonstrates an overall increase of approximately $32.9 million. Among those allocations are the $16.1 million in general revenue for the College of Osteopathic Medicine, $7.8 million in revenue bonds for construction, $3 million in comprehensive regional university funding, $500,000 for Forensic Training Center, and $3 million in appropriations dedicated to our Law Enforcement Management Institute. This year, we took significant effort to ensure that our budget is aligned with our new strategic plan. We've identified critical initiatives that will pave the way for success. And some of those key initiatives that I would like to highlight for the committee today include an investment of over $8 million in our current staff and faculty salaries to ensure that we are able to both recruit and retain the talent that makes Sam Houston stand out. This year, we also have a strong backing for athletics as our program enters Conference USA and FBS football. And we also provided targeted initiatives in academics to grow programs, improve retention, and support academic performance. Sam Houston State University's financial strength and consistently healthy enrollment trends reassure us that we will conclude fiscal year 23 in a position of stability. Looking ahead, the proposed budget for 24 lays a solid foundation to sustain our growth and ensure the success of our students, faculty, and staff. I'm grateful for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions for Sam Houston State University?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Sul Ross State University. And I believe Bonnie Albright, the CFO, will be laying out the presentation for Sul Ross and Dr. Hernandez.
Overall, Sul Ross State University is using a conservative approach for budget estimates for Alpine and Rio Grande College, or RGC, based on prior enrollment for our $37 million budget in Alpine and our $14 million budget in RGC. We have benefited from our increased summer enrollment, but declines in prior semesters continue to negatively affect our income projections. We have realized cost savings with the elimination of administrative positions, as well as an individual restructure within departments to better align with serving students and employees. We have an overall increase in revenue of 15% for fiscal year 24 for Alpine. This is due to state and auxiliary funding, but primarily the Capital Construction Assistant Projects Revenue Bond, or CCAP, of $2.6 million. Auxiliary revenue was adjusted to be more in line with actual, which provides for an increase in projected dining and housing and parking revenue, along with a 4% increase in dining and 5% increase in housing approved by the board. We have an overall increase in revenue of 39% for fiscal year 24 for RGC. This is due to state funding for the CCAP of $3 million. With limited additional operating revenue, Sul Ross focused on utilization of funds within the departments on positions and operating expenses and the use of grant funding. We are pursuing recruitment and retention strategies to increase both headcount enrollment and semester credit hour production. Leading indicators from application admissions data are encouraging and reflect a 20% increase in completed applications, as well as a 38% increase in admittances. To better serve our students, our Culture of Care initiative engages all employees to assist and support students for a better college experience. We are developing new undergrad and graduate degree programs in business and healthcare to meet the needs of the areas of Alpine, Uvalde, Del Rio, and Eagle Pass. We are working on a master plan for the Eagle Pass Independent Campus and the first building to be built. We have been approved to migrate to NCAA Division II and are expanding our rodeo team activities, as well as looking into the expansion of post-secondary educational opportunities for the regions we serve. We are excited about the opportunities we have at Sul Ross State University, and we are cautiously optimistic that our initiatives will continue to positively affect admissions, enrollment, and student success in the new fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Unless there's questions for Sul Ross State University, we can move on to Texas State University. And I don't know if Dr. Danfus or Eric Algo have any comments.
I'm here to present, and then Eric will rebut any mistakes I make. So thank you for a chance to share a little bit about our budget. FY24 budget represents an overall increase of around just shy of $68 million, or about 8.8%. This is mostly attributable to a strong legislative session, increases in financial aid, and expected increases to other income generating activities like housing and dining. We based our budget on very conservative, we believe, 2% increase in in enrollment and growth. As of this morning, our student credit hours are up 7.8%. Our freshman class is up 5.2%. New transfers is up 7.6%. New doctoral students is up 49%. And so we feel very good about where we are in enrollment and about the conservative nature of our budget for the coming year. We also benefited greatly from a tremendous legislative session, thanks to the hard work of the system office staff, in particular the chancellor, who worked very hard to make sure that we had some key items addressed, especially the Hazelwood Act. We are probably the third most invested school in the state with Hazelwood. Somewhere around 2,000 individuals have annually their tuition and fees waived. That costs our university around $20 million per year. The change in support for that doesn't address fees, but does address tuition, and that will have a huge impact on us. Somewhere around $9 million per year will help offset the cost of the Hazelwood Act. We're proud to have so many military veterans and their family members and current service members attending Texas State, but we're grateful for the fact that the state now will be taking on more of that financial burden. Designated revenues are up around $36 million, or about 11.8%, as detailed in table B1 of the board report. This is mostly due to sponsored programs revenue expanding, study abroad, electronic course fees, for example, increasing as well. We're continuing to invest in our future as we run towards R1. We are investing about $12 million in permanent funding for many new initiatives to become an R1 institution, including stipends for graduate students. That's beginning to bear fruit. We currently have about 32% more doctoral students this fall than we had last fall of returning doctoral students. Some of them started in the spring and the summer, and we're up 49% in new doctoral students starting this fall. So we are well on our way to getting more doctoral graduates through our program now that will help us attain R1 status, hopefully by 2027. The budget continues to invest in our students, over $7.7 million in new funding for scholarships and financial aid. And revenue projections are up about 4.7%, as you can see in table C1 of the board report. And so the future looks bright for us. We are investing the resources that we have available for us to continue to grow the university. And that includes several initiatives related to growing online international enrollment and also our Round Rock campus as well. So if anyone has any questions, by the way, the tough funding that will be coming our way, if it's approved by the voters, goes through a vote of the public this fall. If that gets approved, that will be a huge boon for us, but we did not include that in the current budget. So likely what we would do is just roll that over into next year's budget and invest those monies into expanding our research portfolio. Any questions? Or any rebuttal from Eric?
Great job, Dr. Danfus.
So Dr. Danfus, I was able to sit in on the Academic Affairs Committee yesterday, and congratulations on a robust slate of new PhD programs. And
Thank you.
It looks like you're making significant other investments in the university. It's creating some deficit spending this year. How long can you speak to, some of the bigger components of that beyond the PhD programs, and then how long it might be until you kind of return to a more balanced budget program?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in January, and I'll ask Eric to get in the details. In January, we were projecting using about $12 million in reserves for this year's budget. That number now is down to around $2 million projected using reserves. We actually have a pretty significant reserve holding, so we're not really nervous about the long term, except for you can't continually spend in your reserves. But we actually are trying to be good stewards with our resources by spending the reserves that we have. And so recall that our current budget is based on a 2% growth in enrollment, and we're seeing 5 to 7% to 8% increasing enrollment. So not every student who attends is a full paying student, and there's certainly tuition dollars and scholarship dollars that have to be accounted for, but we feel pretty good about our enrollment trends to be able to cover that. But so the two main focuses for us that have impacted our need to use some of our reserves are the run to R1, the increase in doctoral students and doctoral programs, the increase in scholarship offerings. Our discount rate had been traditionally pretty low. We weren't offering very many scholarships using institutional funds, and we increased that. We're still pretty low compared to some of our competitors, but we have invested a lot more in scholarships. And then also raises for our employees and adding new positions. We are last year around this time, I think we were down around 180 employees pre-COVID. We're trying to backfill that as well. So Eric, you want to jump in?
And the only thing I would add regionally to the question is that the primary reason for the deficit, especially when we thought it could be as high as 12 million, really was related to resetting our competitive nature with regards to student scholarship, merit scholarships in particular. Historically, as Dr. Danfus said, we had been down in the single digits in terms of a discount rate, somewhere around 9% of merit aid awarded. And we realized that most of the other schools we compete against were up around 20%. So we made a decision to invest about $50 million. That's an annual increase of $50 million. It's taken 4 years to get it done, to increase the amount of financial aid we award each year by that $50 million number. Obviously, that was done 4 freshman classes at a time. This year is the last of those 4 years to phase that in. So the full $50 million is now in the budget. That has now put us up at an 18.2% discount rate, which is, as Dr. Danfus said, just below our competitors, but much more competitive to have the kinds of students that we want to come to Texas State be able to afford to come here. So that's now fully built into the budget. And as Dr. Danfus mentioned, we only have a 2% enrollment growth built in. We think we will definitely be at least 3%. And with 3%, we actually will have a surplus budget. So what we've turned in here is very conservative. We may end up, in fact, I today would tell you, I do not expect we will actually use any of our reserves, but in keeping with our conservative nature, we don't count those students until the 12th class day and they've actually paid their bills.
And just to follow up, one last note is the impact of those institutional scholarships is, I think, pretty evident. We look at fall of 2020, our freshman class was about 54 or 5,500, and we're looking at 8,000 in the freshman class this year, just shy of 8,000 in the freshman class. So that's a tremendous increase over time. It's a great question.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
There you go. Next is Lamar Institute of Technology on page 222, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Valentine.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm actually going to defer this to Mary Wickland. Mary.
Good afternoon, Honorable Regents. I am happy to present the budget recommendations for LIT for fiscal year 2024. The budget is fiscally conservative, assuming a flat enrollment. The proposed budget includes all educational and general designated and auxiliary enterprise activities. LIT's general revenue appropriations had an overall increase of 40.16%. This is the result of legislative support made possible by the hard work of our systems office, and thank you so much. Formula funding rates were increased again, as well as our HEAF allocations, our group insurance appropriations, and our debt service. HEAF will be used for needed renovations of facilities to allow for new programs. And thanks to Senate Bill 30, the college also received $4 million to renovate the Tommy Williams building, which will become our Advanced Technology Center. Designated funds are allocated to provide academic programs with equipment and supplies. LIT has set aside $500,000 to allow for new academic programs and potential increased costs to operate those programs. In addition, those areas that support academics, such as marketing, student success, and facilities, are included in the budget for designated funds. Auxiliary revenues for the student center fee is collected from LIT students and transferred to Lamar University. for use of their facilities. Students are no longer charged for the use of the health center or recreational center located on the campus of Lamar University. LIT pays for the use of those facilities on behalf of the students. The Student Advisory Committee met in May and approved requests submitted by the student organization. The support from our Texas legislature has given LIT a tremendous opportunity to serve the community with lower tuition and fees in order to attain an affordable education to improve their standard of living. Our institution will remain fiscally responsible in its spending and will continue to look at cost savings in all areas. LIT remains committed to providing an excellent education to our students and be a quality place to work for our faculty and staff. Thank you, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mary. Is there any questions for Lamar Institute of Technology? Hearing none, we have next is Lamar State College Orange on page 237. Dr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Regents, it's good to talk to you this afternoon. We are making the following declarations in conjunction with our submission of the Lamar State College Orange budget for the fiscal year beginning September 1. The proposed budget encompasses the educational and general designated and auxiliary funds of the college. Enrollment for FY23 has increased significantly when compared to the 22. Accordingly, we used the 23 actual revenue to record to the date as the basis for predicting the revenue we expect to earn in 24. Any anticipated program developments were accounted for in the budget. In FY24, the budget remains flat from 23 with a few exceptions for increases. The 24 budget continues to put emphasis on our ongoing construction projects. The campus's main emphasis remains at increasing enrollment, maintaining the lower tuition, books, and fee rates for our students. Once again, for the 24 to 25 biennium, formula funding rates were increased. EAF allocations were increased, and we received Senate Bill 30 for the construction of our new Student Success Center. This additional funding amounted to 33% increase from FY23 to FY24. Our higher education fund allocation is budgeted for debt service and capital equipment. The balance of the HEAF appropriation is reserved for ongoing capital projects. The budget is reflective of the additional appropriation for non-formula support for the new allied health programs, maritime programs, and institutional enhancement. For FY24 and FY25, designated tuition remains reduced for traditional students, and dual credit remains at the same rate with the tuition shifting from E&G to designated. Budget transfers from institutional service fee were used to offset deficits to the other fees that were eliminated or reduced for the parity. The student service fee hearing was held in May, and the student organizations were able to request what they needed for FY24. With the ongoing support from our Texas legislature and the support from our system office, the college is able to expand with the creation of new infrastructure and refurbishing existing property. Lamar State College Orange remains in a fiscally sound condition, and we have adequate resources to maintain our commitment to quality instruction and support services. We continue to have adequate financial reserves to handle any anticipated contingencies. The future is indeed bright at Lamar State College Orange. Thank you, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any questions for Lamar State College Orange? Hearing none, we've got Lamar State College Port Arthur on page 253, and I believe Mary Wickland will be laying out the summary for Dr. Renard.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Renard was not able to attend. She had another commitment. So the following information includes recommendations for the annual budget for Lamar State College Port Arthur's fiscal year 2024. As we reflect upon fiscal year 2023, our credit class enrollment and contact hours have increased over the previous fiscal year. while non-credit training has reported even greater increases. Each of these accomplishments has occurred despite inflationary trends and other events that work against educational opportunities. LSCPA and its community remains resilient and looks forward to fiscal year 2024 with anticipation. The total revenues related to education and general funds reflected a 32% increase from fiscal year 2023. The overall increase is mainly attributed to the increase in funding related to debt service of over $3 million. The remaining increase is related to bill pattern revenue, resulting from increased contact hours and increased contact hour funding rate provided by the legislature. Also reflected in the budget is the increase for group insurance appropriations to provide a level of relief as medical insurance costs continue to rise. A 3% merit pool for faculty and staff salary increases is possible due to the continued efforts of our employees to execute our mission on a daily basis. Our HEAP allocation is budgeted for capital equipment and improvements and for possible maintenance and emergency expenditures for our ongoing campus facilities, as well as the Allied Health and Sciences construction project. The total designated funds budgeted revenues are projected with an increase of 36%. You might have noticed that. But this increase is due primarily to the recharacterization of dual credit tuition from statutory to designated tuition. We also have an increase in revenue from shared service reimbursements, as well as the projected increase in CDL fees associated with the opening of the CDL Education and Examination Center. The student service fee hearing was in April, and that overall spend for student organizations increased 18%. Lamar State College Port Arthur is financially sound. The fiscal condition of the college continues to remain constant, despite the economic challenges that inflationary factors have on our community. The budget does provide for campus needs and is balanced for fiscal year 2024. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions on Lamar State College, Port Arthur? Well, hearing none, the last presentation we have is for system administration. The FY24 operating budget is $14.7 million. It's a 9% increase compared to the previous year. State appropriations are flat for the system office, and then the revenue collection is up, associated both with the growth of the components plus a 5 basis point increase in the rate. There are no material changes to our operating structure. And at the requested level, the funding will support the strategic efforts that have effectively and efficiently supported the goals of both the Board of Regents and the component institutions, and done at a staffing level and a budget significantly below that of any other university system in Texas. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the budget presentations.
Thank you, Daniel. Regents, do you have any questions of any of the universities or colleges that you weren't able to ask before? With no other questions, I would like to make a formal ask of each of the regents on the committee. If you are in favor of moving all of the budgeted items over for full board review next week. I'll begin with Regent Austin.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Regent Long.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Regent Scott.
Yes, I agree also.
And I concur as well. Being that there's no other business, I would like to thank everyone for calling in.
Regionally, I've got a few more things I want to squeeze in if we can. We do have the 24 audit and compliance plan that Ms. Carol Fox would like to present.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Sorry about that, Carol. My mistake.
No worries. Thank you. The draft audit and compliance plan that appears in the board book documents the functional areas the Office of Internal Audit intends to devote resources to during fiscal year 2024. The plan is divided into 3 different categories: statutory activities, which really need no explanation. These are projects required by law for all components in system administration. Risk-based activities, which are those projects identified at the components and system administration during the annual risk assessment, utilizing input from executive and departmental management. And then lastly, an other activities category, which includes those required by grant agreements or third parties, consulting and advisory services, special projects such as time-sensitive management requested reviews, investigations, and other activities that will assist management in mitigating risks. I would like to acknowledge the collective collaborative efforts of the presidents and their management teams, the vice chancellors and the chancellor in developing the plan. Their valuable insights and input into the plan helps ensure we can focus our risk-based activities on matters that they consider most important. Last but not least, I'd like to acknowledge the component housed audit directors and their teams and the system compliance officer for all of the work put into developing the plan. The directors and the compliance officer are on the call in case anyone has any questions. And then lastly, I'd like to thank the Finance and Audit Committee members and Chairman Regent Lee on their assistance. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Carol. Chairman Lee, this item, unless there's any questions, will require a vote.
Okay. Regis, do you have any questions of Carol on her 24 audit plan? Hearing none, like to ask your vote to move that forward to the full board. Regent Austin?
Yes, I approve to move it forward.
Regent Long?
Yeah, I approve. I vote for.
Regent Scott?
I agree.
And I concur as well. Now, Daniel, unless I have missed something else, I do think that.
No, I got 2 more items for you. So we have an informational item on page 290. This is the reoccurring status of the implementation of the audit and compliance recommendations. I think we adoringly call it the red light, yellow light, green light report. So at your leisure, you can flip through it and see the status of the implementation of the components. And then the last item we have is the consent agenda, which will require a vote. There's 4 items. It's setting the dual credit tuition rate for Sam Houston State University, setting the dual credit designated tuition rate for Sul Ross State University. They're following a similar model that the state colleges did on the tuition structure, $50 per semester credit hour if the course is taught by the local ISD employee, $100 per semester credit hour if it's taught by a university employee. Then we have a ground lease at Texas State's Round Rock campus for a potential VA clinic. And then the last item we have is a policy statement acknowledging that the Board of Regents does not intend to raise tuition past the currently approved levels for this academic year and next academic year. And that results in the additional state appropriation that Dr. Danfus mentioned in his presentation, and actually everyone mentioned in theirs. And that concludes the layout of the consent agenda. And then if there's questions, happy to entertain those. And if not, we'll require a vote. Regionally, I don't know if you are still there.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Sorry. It's been fun today. So Regents, do you any of you have any questions about the consent agenda items? Being no questions, Regent Austin, are you in favor of moving those 4 items forward to the full board?
I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thank you. Regent Long?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Regent Scott?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I concur as well. And Daniel, please tell me I hadn't forgot something else.
Mr. Chairman, that does conclude our presentation of the Finance and Audit Committee agenda.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for calling in and bearing with me through this. Unless there's further discussion, this concludes our telephone meeting today. For the record, the time is 2:42. Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you all again next week in Alpine. Thanks for joining the call.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.